expressions that happen after the fact, okay? And the top expression is willful ignorance. People refusing to look into the truth for themselves, willfully staying ignorant, okay? Now people will say, well, isn't that the root? Isn't that the root cause? No, that's the expression that follows the root cause. Well, what lies beneath that? What's the bigger branches of this tree of evil? Beneath willful ignorance, people have a fundamental fear of owning their own personal responsibility. We don't want to be truly responsible for our own behavior. We want to pass the buck. We want to pass responsibility on to others and say, no, this isn't us doing this to ourselves. It isn't our responsibility. It's someone else's responsibility. Okay? So the fear of owning personal responsibility goes deeper in the psychological framework for why people are willfully ignorant. There's a reason people have fear of owning their own personal responsibility. Okay? And that is what I would call the trunk of the tree of evil. The trunk of the tree is self-loathing. Humanity is a species that hates itself, ultimately. Deep, deep, deep down inside, nested into the deep underneath of the subconscious mind, we are a self-loathing species. Okay? And that's due to a lack of self-respect. We don't have self-respect because we don't have enough understanding of self. We don't have self-knowledge. We don't have enough understanding of consciousness. And it should never exist. We should get rid of the whole concept of blame. Okay? When people buy into this notion, it quickly descends into the idea that no one is ever truly responsible for anything that manifests in this world. That's what they're really saying when they say, don't judge, don't blame. Nobody's at fault. Things just happen. It just magically got that way. No, things don't just happen. According to law, every effect is preceded by its cause. Things are caused to happen. They don't just magically occur. Okay? The condition we're in now did not just magically occur. God didn't just throw us on the earth and say, well, I'm going to enslave you now. No, we did that to ourselves. Or it possibly had a lot to do with being done to us, which I'm not going to get to in this presentation, but we are continuing that condition, let's put it that way.
Who wants change? And everybody has their hand raised like, oh, give me some of that change. And then he says, who wants to change? And then everybody's just like this. Hands down, heads down, like, no, not me. I'm fine the way I am. No problem here. Nothing required on my part to do or to change within myself. You know, I don't want any part of that activity. There are two primary choices in life: to accept conditions as they exist or to accept the responsibility for changing them. And that's what you have to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Which side of that coin are you on? Either you're an agent who is trying to influence change, or you are a person who's just accepted the default conditions as the status quo.
That we're going to build on top of that. The third process, all right, is the behavior or the output, as we've already talked about in the human nature section. The output onto the screen of life then occurs because each individual's behavior is, by definition, going to be based upon the quality of their decision-making processes in step 2, which were in turn based upon the quality of their available information in step 1. That's why if you want to control the output, you always control it from available information. Hence, hiding knowledge, the occult, okay? That's where the powers that should not be control the world from the level of available information. So, what then occurs? What happens? These are the 3 steps we work with: knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, or lack thereof. This is processing, and this is output. Okay? All of those different ways of looking at it hold true. But then there's something that happens. Manifestation. The manifested reality that is the quality of our shared experience in this world. The quality of the condition which manifests in any given society is based upon the aggregate quality of behavior within that society. aggregate quality of behavior, meaning in the totality. So, if you have the aggregate number of human beings in a society behaving morally, you will have a society that generates a result of order. If you have an aggregate amount of people in society that are behaving immorally, you will have a society that has generated chaos, slavery, tyranny, etc. Children that are nothing but communists in disguise, okay, who think that communism is anarchy, all right, because they've read the absolutely polluted writings of Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, etc., okay, and advocate, yeah, well, let's take everything, give all resources into the hands of the state. We'll magically be free then. And then they think anybody who disagrees with them is a dyed-in-the-wool, crony capitalist that believes money is the solution to everything, and human greed should see no bounds, That's why people have a hard time with my work. I don't believe in any of it. I'm out of the mind control, out, 100% out. All of those systems do nothing but lead to control and slavery. Okay? And that's what other people need to get out. Out is the answer. Out is the solution. Get to the outside of that so you can see it from the outside. Our behavior is the root causal factor which inevitably and unwaveringly leads to effects in our reality, to manifestations, to manifested effects in our reality. Upon taking certain actions, certain effects are created, and we must experience the consequences that arise as a result of that causal link between behavior and manifested reality. Right action, guided by conscience and in harmony with natural law, will lead to desirable consequences such as order, peace, and freedom, while wrong action, perpetuated by ignorance, the refusal of personal responsibility, and cop-outs such as, quote, I'm just following orders, unquote, will bring undesirable consequences such as chaos. You can get this, you can understand it. There's no superhuman capability involved. A shift in the quality of attention is involved, and a shift in worldview is involved, and that's it. And everyone is capable of that. Ladies and gentlemen, the people who think that there are just some people who can never get this, you're wrong. Everyone can understand this information. It is nothing that is difficult to understand. People are under conditioning and mind control, but more so than that, they really don't want to get the information. They don't want to know the truth because they know subconsciously that that implies personal responsibility to act based on knowledge. So they would rather willfully remain ignorant so they could somehow attempt to justify their inaction. Is it disheartening? I think that it is, because it just shows you how destroyed people are. They're so mentally and spiritually destroyed and degenerated. It's just unfathomable to me that this is still where we are in the age of total information. We are in an age where information is at everyone's fingertips and they actually act like degenerated animals. It's so sad that. And they don't even understand they're the ones who are keeping the prison going. Their ignorance is actually keeping the prison going. They don't care that they're slaves. They love it. They love being slaves. They love it. They can't get enough of it. They can't get enough lies. They can't get enough disinformation. They can't get enough slavery. Visit the interior of the earth, and through rectification you will discover the hidden stone from the alchemical tradition. And this means that you need to start looking at yourself. You need to look inwardly to understand what's really controlling things. What's really going on in the world is a direct result, is an outward manifestation of what's taking place within each individual. And the only way to really understand the causal factors
of our experience in the external reality. We have to go within, and there we will find that generative force, because it is ultimately coming from us.
We need to change the quality of our attention. This is directly in relationship to the information that we take in. Human beings are very definitively the product of the information that they have taken into themselves. So the quality of what we put in is going to determine the quality of what we get out, of what we experience, and how we experience the world. Thomas Jefferson said that if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and what never will be. Truer words were never spoken. There is no such thing as the simultaneous coexistence of ignorance and freedom. It is one or the other. An ignorant population is an enslaved population.
I mean, I just have to come out and say it. People are just so appallingly ignorant. It's just, there is so much dross and chaff out there. You know, people's minds are just, they're burnt. They really are burnt. These people are operating with burnt brains. I mean, that's the only way I can say it. I can't be nice about it. And I just want to just distance myself as much as possible from all of this. And that's about as honest as I can be about it, because the level of ignorance that people have come to, they really do deserve what they have, and they really do deserve what's coming. The problem I have with it all is that there is a smaller segment of people who don't deserve what's coming. They don't deserve to go through the kind of suffering that we're going to witness in our lifetimes. I mean, you just think about, look, folks, just do this as a social experiment. Here's my challenge and my homework for the week. Go and try to talk to any young woman, like a teenage girl, and just even try to see what type of a mindset that they are in, how they have been culturally conditioned, the type of pop culture that they are involved in, exposed to, their entire mindset of how they talk to each other, what they talk about. Just try to put yourself around that for a day if you can, and just absorb the mentality. Because most people won't do that, or don't have access to do that. But you do it, and you tell me you're not horrifically appalled, I'll call you a liar right to your face. You sound like you're crazy because you think these things, just because they don't understand them. And people fear what they don't understand. So they're in shutdown mode, and they say, you got to be in shutdown mode with me. And you know what? That's the worst place you could possibly be, especially as an individual who knows something about what's going on. I'll tell you what, that's the last place I'd ever want to be. In many cases, people are living in such a state of conflict internally and conflict with the truth that they'll go into addiction mode, to beat up on themselves, doing drugs and alcohol, and trying to numb out that knowing, that inner knowing that they should be involved in this battle. Part of getting that whole attitude out of your whole makeup is to develop real courage.
Now, the New Age movement differs with this greatly, because they want to try to teach people in a lot of their teachings, and in a lot of the teachers, what they espouse is that everybody is okay just the way they are. This is the opposite end of the imbalance. That's not self-loathing. That's thinking that nothing could ever be your fault. That you're perfect just the way you are, and you don't need any improvement. And that's also bunk. That's the opposite of the original sin garbage. That you're just totally flawed and you deserve to suffer. The first step is to stop lying to yourself. Admit what your flaws are. Don't hate yourself over them. Don't beat yourself up over them, but admit them. Don't live in denial. That's where most people are at. Most people. Not all, but most.
It's true. Most people live in denial all the time. They don't think there's any problem with themselves or the world, and there is. It isn't all okay. People aren't good the way they are. It doesn't mean that they weren't born essentially good. It doesn't mean that they can become good again. But most people are pretty screwed up psychologically, bodily, spiritually. And it's largely because they haven't developed true self-care, true self-respect, true self-love.
How we are getting the result of what we put out into the universe, often over a time lag. Okay? That's the hard part of recognizing the laws of cause and effect. Only when we understand how those dynamics work do we understand we are getting what we have put out there through our own behavior. Every cause has its effect. Invariably, it is law. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Nothing happens by chance. Cause and effect, however, are often separated by time and space, which makes the understanding of the laws of cause and effect sometimes difficult, because as soon as you do an immoral behavior, an anvil doesn't drop on your head from the sky. It would be nice if it happened that way, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. What happens is, as more immoral behavior builds up in the aggregate of society, in the collective of society, of any given society, the more chaos and slavery is going to result in that. Order followers and their supporters are the true destroyers of this world. Unfortunately, that statement is true. People always want to pass the buck. They want to point fingers outward. They never want to do this. See, that's what I had to do to get out of the cult. Couldn't do this. Couldn't say it was you. Couldn't say it was the cult leaders. I had to recognize at a deep fundamental level of my being that I was the problem and I was wrong. You know, we want to pass that responsibility on to, the people in the upper echelons of power, the politicians, which aren't really in the upper echelons of power, they're the puppets. But they think of the politicians as the one who are there, the international bankers.
And you want to look to who actually did those things? Don't look at the people who were directing it. That's the distraction, sir. That's the distraction. The distraction is that people want to always blame somebody above them. And that history then records that Hitler did these atrocities. Yeah, was he one of the puppets that basically trickled down the orders of the masters down to all of the other foot soldiers? Absolutely. And he was vile and evil, just like Himmler was, and Goebbels and all of the other ones. But it doesn't happen without the people willing to carry out those orders, because they don't care about right or wrong. That's the bottom line. And that's the truth.
The people who keep slavery in place are the people who willfully follow their orders. Nobody wants to hear that. And people will hate you for saying it. Following orders means, by definition, doing what you are told to do without judging for yourself whether or not that action that you are being ordered to carry out is actually right or wrong. That's the definition of following orders. I mean, can anybody refute that? Is that not the actual definition of following someone else's order? By definition, you're not, if you're following the order, you're given the order and then you just act. You just do it because you're following the order. You don't sit there and go, is what that person told me to do right? Do I have a right to do that? Is that moral? Should I do that because, it's okay and it doesn't hurt somebody else? Or should I not do that?
Any evidence of it. I see that I'm an isolated, tiny little pocket, an anomaly in the matrix talking about these things. And I just don't see people acknowledging it to the point where they are running with that information and teaching it to others, and then that having a wider impact in our society. I don't see evidence of it at all. That's where I think the world is at right now. I think we are as asleep as we have ever been. I think we are more than ever looking for a savior and looking for external
solutions to problems which are firmly rooted in the way people think. The problem is firmly rooted in the mind, and I do not see any evidence that people's mindset is changing in numbers that are large enough to have any impact in our society to change it. I see people who are 100% ignorant, 100% asleep. It's the blind following the blind, because they have not hit upon any of the genuine, real topics that need to be discussed. And many of them are scared because their own peer group will frown upon them as they frown upon me. I'm telling you, libertarians look at me like I'm a demon. They don't want to hear any of the stuff that I talk about. They don't want to hear it all. They want people blowing smoke up their rear ends, telling them there's going to be a financial solution to the crisis we face. We're going to vote the right person into office one day from the Libertarian Party. He's going to get in there and make all the changes that are needed to be made. That's what they want to hear. They want somebody amongst their own rank blowing smoke up their rear end. And many of them can't even imagine a society where authority isn't looked at as legitimate, and we don't have a government or a ruling class anymore. They can't even see that is how devastated their imagination is in the community that is advocating for rights and more freedom. And they think they're going to get it by these political and financial measures. They're delusional people. They don't understand that this is not about changes in politics or finance. This is about a change in consciousness. This is about changing the way you think about reality. And you tell that to people, and they're like, whoa. You stay right there and keep saying that. I'm going to run this way as fast as I can, because they don't want to hear it. That's what's required of your change in your mind and in your heart and in your behavior. No, they don't want to hear that. They want everybody. They want people doing this. It's that. No, it's you. It's you that's the problem. See? That's what it is. You got to stop doing this. You got to stop doing this, and you got to start doing this. When people start doing that, that's when I'll admit that there's some change in consciousness taking place on Earth. I mean, if people still think that in the modern world, they're 100% asleep. They have no idea what's really going on behind the scenes in the realms of power in this world. They don't want to understand, because a deep understanding of the absolute evil that we are ensconced in will place firmly upon the shoulders of anyone who does understand it a moral obligation and personal responsibility to act in a way as such that you are doing something about it, to try to raise awareness of it to other people who are still asleep, or to actually take action, physical, real-world action, to make these people stop what they are doing, stop all the abuse of rights that they are conducting, stop all the theft that they are doing, stop all the violence that they are doing to people. And when you look at it, it ultimately all comes down to the people who will help and protect and serve this ruling class of people. This deity known as Satan. It's a concept, people. It's an allegory. Okay, understand the metaphor. We're talking about evil and how it rules, and evil does rule. Evil right now in the world is more powerful than good in the world. You want to talk philosophically about which force in and of itself is more powerful. You can make the argument good is more powerful than evil ultimately at the highest level of existence. On Earth, however, evil is more powerful than good. There's no question about it, because more people have taken evil into their mind and heart and accepted it as normal than have taken good into their mind and heart and accepted the fact that they must propagate it to others. You see very few people doing that, talking about objective morality, talking about that order following is not a virtue. I mean, I could count the people doing that in the world on two hands.
This religion, what the beliefs of this religion entail,
Their eyes go glossy. They don't want to hear it because ultimately what they hear is, I identify with some of those beliefs. Yeah, there's a reason for that. That's what the dark occultists have been trying to do. They have been trying to make the world in their image and likeness. That's what God does, right? They want people to subscribe to their belief system at a lower level. Because people who subscribe to this belief system, which we're going to talk about, cannot control people who are out of that belief system. People, to be controlled and enslaved, must, at some level, be subscribers of this religion. And that's why people don't want to know about real Satanism. They want to think about the Hollywood variant of it, or the Christianized
Well, this is humanity. Humanity is the little child that is a little slow, and they want not to be burned, yet simultaneously they insist, no, I want to put my hand on the burner while the range is on and not be burned simultaneously. Well, good luck with that, folks, because it doesn't work that way. You don't want to be burned, the hand can't be kept there while the stove is on. The end. You don't want negative, self-inflicted suffering and chaos in your life? You got to align your behavior to natural law, which means you got to know the difference objectively between right and wrong, and willfully, through your free will, deliberately choose the right action over the wrong action.
Something that's participation with evil. Let me just say that out, right and out in the open, no apologies, straightforward. If you think like that, you are participating with the system of evil that exists here on earth. Yep. By saying it's not your responsibility to change it. Bull.
Absolutely.
Bull. And it needs to just be come out and said like that. We need to just start calling these people on their utter bull, their nonsense. This is nonsense. That's like saying, it's not our responsibility to stop the child pedophilia that's going on in the world. No. It isn't our responsibility to stop all the warmongering, all the deaths of innocent people, the rape of other countries' natural resources, the total corruption everywhere all around us in politics, banking, military law, corporations. No, we're here to just let that run amok unchecked.
Therefore, be responsible for everything. We should be responsible for everything that we create by being responsible for that which we think. Because the thought processes are what are driving the behaviors. People behave the way they do because they have certain belief systems embedded in the mind and running like a program. Their thoughts and their emotions are driving their actions. So the behavior is not magically suddenly going to just change. The thoughts and emotions have to change because they're the driving force behind the behavior. That's when reality will change. See, people don't want to hear that, once again. They don't want to hear. If you want to change reality, you, yourself, have to change the way you think. Because the way you think is not conducive to the requirements for getting what you say you want. They're doing the exact opposite of that in many cases. You could start in the present to undo it in the future. But as far as the present moment and all moments in the past go, you're not changing that. That's truth. That's what is. Okay? That's already manifested. You can't change it. No power to affect change lies in continuously analyzing the symptoms. You got to do that long enough that you know where the problem's at. You've made the diagnosis. Now you can get to the causal factors and start going to work changing those causes. Okay? Unfortunately, this plane, the plane of effect, seems to be where human consciousness in the aggregate is trapped. It can't seem to get past there. Even if it recognizes the problem, it wants to keep describing the problem. It wants to keep describing the prison. It doesn't want to look at the causal factors because it's afraid of what the causal factors are. It doesn't want to acknowledge the causal factors lie in how we think, feel, and act, and until those things are changed, the external manifestation cannot.
And that's all I see around me. I walk outside, folks, I don't see hardly one person who cares about a real issue or will even discuss a real issue.
And you know what they are? They're people who think nothing physically bad or dangerous can ever happen to them. They actually believe that. They actually believe, because restraint has been being used by people in society to the extent that it has, that things will never break down and people will never say no with teeth. And you bring up the idea of physical rebellion against tyrannical government to them, and they think it's not possible. What do they think? It has never happened? First of all, it's already happened in this land. And the seat of that rebellion was right here in the city where I live. And I don't think that's an accident. Today is, are your quote-unquote likes truly your own? A very uncomfortable question to ask. What qualities do you find attractive in another person? Is it possible that such likes and preferences could be implanted into your belief system? It might surprise and even disturb most people to think that such aspects of their personality may not actually be their own. Most people don't even truly know why they find certain things attractive and others not. The same can be said for both men and women. Is all such attraction just a natural instinctual dynamic? Or can a great portion of that kind of attraction be attributed to cultural programming? And I would suggest most certainly it is the latter. There's a lot of cultural programming and engineering that goes into manipulating people's perceptions of what they find attractive or not. What we care enough to put our will behind is ultimately what will get created in our world, what we will manifest in our world. The world is the way that it is because most people do not care enough, even if they say they want change and they say they want things to be different, to change it through their actions. And people hate when I say this because they're like, well, what you're saying is more people really ultimately want it that way. Yeah, it doesn't matter what you say you want. It matters what you do ultimately. See, that's the whole thing. There's one choice or another. You accept it to stay the way it is, or you actually take action to change it. And if you're not actively involved in that process, again, you're part of the problem and you're helping things stay the way it is, whether you say you want it to change or not. That's what the principle of care is about. You have to care enough to get up and do something about it. So if the world is the way that it is, by absolute definition, what do we have to be programming our children with? Quality or garbage? Garbage, largely. Or the world could not be the way it is. It could not manifest itself the way that it is. So, that's the hard truth. That's what human nature is, folks. Not just one way, it's good or bad, or this is just the nature of how people behave. They're always just going to be programmed by their genetics to behave that way, and there's nothing they could do about it. Nonsense. We have free will choice. We exist in a free will universe. You always have a choice. You're not controlled by your genes. Consciousness precedes gene expression. You change the way you think and believe, you could change the manifested result in the so-called external domain called the world.
Wrapped up in. So everything that we've talked about so far is all about the knowledge of good and evil. That's what this is really about. This is about the understanding of what's right and what's wrong. That's all it really comes down to. Is there really a moral way of being in the world? Okay? Or is there moral relativism? It doesn't make a difference how we think, feel, and act. It's all relative. And it's all just, I can make it up as I go along. I'm the arbiter of truth. Okay? Or is there really a nature of good and a nature of evil? And do they manifest in our experience based on how we think, feel, and act? I would say definitely that is the case. So good manifests through the emotional polarity of love, evil through the emotional polarity of fear. That which you turn your attention to is that which manifests in your experience. It's been stated that way. Okay? Jesus said it like this. You reap what you sow. That which is sown is that which is then reaped. Okay? And it's also been stated that as you think, the highest idea that you hold in your mind about what you can be, so you will be. Okay?
And I describe this in a quote that the definition of mind control, the very definition of mind control, is the extermination of the imagination. If you can exterminate the idea in someone's mind that anything can be different than what it is, you totally have them under your control. Totally. It's entirely up to our will. The creation's will for us is the one and the same as our will for us. That's why anything is possible. It can still go completely downhill and end up in the total enslavement of humanity and the extinction of the species. And creation will not flinch. It will not even be like a dog flicking fleas off of its back. It will be like nothing ever happened here. The creation will go on without this race, just fine. Okay? But if we will ourselves out of this morass of consciousness, so who knows what might be possible? This is the only reason I'm even doing this. I'm only giving this talk because I'm interested in seeing what we may be capable of if we get out of the ridiculous modes of consciousness that we have so much investment in.
And they don't want any personal responsibility to do the right thing. But the joke's on them. That's why they're clowned. You can't give away that personal responsibility. It isn't possible. You are always responsible for everything that's manifesting. Always. Whether you're creating consciously or unconsciously, you're the one creating the manifested result, whether you know it or not, and whether you understand how it works or not. Those laws are always in effect. You are always using them. You are always living with them and under them, and you can never give away responsibility for what you're creating. It's not possible. And inescapability of personal responsibility, that can never be abandoned, and ultimately that's what people want to do more than anything else, is abandon what they can never abandon. You can never get rid of that. It is an impossibility. Under natural law, you cannot abdicate personal responsibility, but this is what people try to do.
Responsibility. And I should have put on the slide the attempted abdication of personal responsibility, because you cannot really abdicate your own personal responsibility. Again, like the claim of authority, it is only a claim that you can do that. In actuality, in reality, you cannot abdicate your personal responsibility. You're always responsible for your own actions and behaviors. Many people want to give up their own personal responsibility to choose between right and wrong action to someone else, someone they consider superior to them, who would make that decision for them. They imagine that somehow this could absolve them of their personal responsibility to make right choices. Not only is this abhorrent and deplorable, it is actually impossible, as each individual is always personally responsible for the choices they make and the actions they take, regardless of their belief otherwise.